there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Ys VIII, Lacrimosa of Dana Inferno walkthrough. Finally we are in the hands of the title character, the titular Dana, even though they don't call her Dana, they call her Dana, which is weird to me. I've never heard that name pronounced that way, and it's not the most natural pronunciation, but alas, that's her name. She is the delicious flat chest of the game, so if you like the absence of tidbitties, she's definitely the waifu for you. And she's also wearing a ridiculous outfit considering she's a maiden. Some kind of priestly figure, some priestess of this grand religion that is obsessed with this great tree. So, all considered, it must not get many winters in this area because she's wearing absolutely nothing. However, she's level 43, which makes her incredibly powerful, and she's powerful anyway. In these moments, you are tasked with navigating the environment and doing certain things. You are also going to have to fight some bosses. There's some optional dungeons should you choose to go through them. There are plenty of opportunities to get stuck in fights with Dana that you're inexperienced for, and you perhaps don't have the levels to make it a fun experience, so just be careful and always make backup saves in these moments, because if you don't know what's coming, it's very easy to run into a boss that's 10 levels higher than you, and you have to smack it for 20 minutes. And I did that on my first run, and it was really annoying, so I want to hopefully be able to warn you and help you avoid that. But also in this video, we're going to be doing the Prehistoric passage, and we're going to be recruiting a character called Ricotta, who is, surprisingly, a small girl who's not annoying in a JRPG, so I have to definitely praise the developers for doing that. But before we can get to that, we have to take on these ridiculous attack cabbages. For some reason, this area has vegetables that are incredibly dangerous, and I don't really know the purpose of them other than to hit me on this run. And this is one of the only areas of the game where there is an environmental hazard that is actually a pain in the ass. So, apparently this is a windswept valley, and every so often the wind kicks up and it makes it really difficult to run across things, as evidenced by my terrible platforming just then. And I'm going to do this a few times, guys, I apologise, I'm ashamed of myself. But it's just one of those bits you don't really expect. Like, random platforming being affected by wind, and because the wind is a massive knobhead, every time I try to do this, the wind is there, and it just turns into a shitfest, and I thought the wind had stopped then, but it was still enough for it to affect my mobility. And of course, it's super wind, so the human being cannot walk against it, even though technically, Dana is not a human being, and she has a whole host of characters that make her a little bit more exceptional than we are. Spoiler alert. Which I should probably talk about that, guys. I'm going to try my best not to talk too much about the story, but this is a walkthrough that is understanding that you have played the game and you are now trying to go through it on the hardest difficulty to get the trophy. If you are not, then you're probably going to have a tough time, but why you would watch an Inferno walkthrough to beat a boss on normal is completely boggling to me, because the bosses on normal are not the same experience. Back to Castaway Village anyhow, after our little foray into the past. Now we're going to be moving around and doing superfluous tasks, which you should always be doing, guys. Once again, just another reminder, I am going to always be conducting as much as I can inside of the environment, because if I don't, I will not be strong enough to take on some of the challenges of the game. It might not look it from the footage, but this game is very taxing and very challenging at times. It's really difficult. I know it's cool for a lot of Ys veterans to be like, oh, the game is easy and all that kind of stuff, and you might find it easy and that's awesome, but it's not. It just means that you're good at it and you've got to a level that is much higher than a lot of other people. It's just how it works as we go back up the Great River Valley. So if you remember up here, there was a section where we passed a ravine and the characters were like, oh, I wonder if this will be important later on. Like, oh, I imagine it might. And then, lo and behold, when we planted a tree in the past, it then grew into this conduit, this bridge, to get us to this next area. And this is introducing you to the first element of James Cameron's influence on the Ys series, and the manipulation of elements in the past to affect the future, to create Cyberdyne, which in turn tries to kill Sarah Connor. But coming up here, you're going to be introduced to primordials, guys, and you need to be really careful, because you remember how we were in that section, and there was those dinosaurs, those velociraptors that were 30 levels higher than me, and when I killed it I got nothing and it didn't give me experience, so there's no reason to do it? Exact same concept here. The creatures you're going to come up against up here are all really, really tough, really durable, but they don't do anything because we don't have a means of killing them yet. So instead of wasting your time, I would recommend you avoiding almost all the fights up this mountain. Later on, when you get the tools to deal with it, you can always come back and grind if that's your thing. The E series has a reputation for being quite grindy, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to get a couple of safety levels to help you have an easier time, feel free to do it. But these creatures are 5 levels higher than me, and they're going to kill me in 1 to 2 hits. And particularly these crazy spiked ones over here, I don't know the name of that dinosaur, but they have stupid, ridiculous range forward flips that hit multiple times if you're unfortunate enough to get caught on it. So they're really aggressive, they cover massive distance, they're really fast, deceptively fast, they're a super tough enemy. And their weak point is their face, so unless you clock them on the nose, you're not going to do the right damage either, so they're a really, really, really dangerous opponent right now. So I recommend that you use caution and stay away from them. The other stuff you can kill, there are these weird pink squirrel things, and these weird, like, bootleg Gyarados guys that are on the ground. You see him just there, they look like Armoured Snake Man, who's not a man at all, but I'm assuming he's gender because I'm insensitive. But be careful in here, because over to the right, there is one of those big dinosaurs just chilling out, and if you aggro him, you're going to get Beybladed in the mouth, and it never ends well. The cool thing, though, about getting to another dungeon is the way that Ys shells out its upgrade materials is that when you get to a new location, not only are you faced with new enemies that are usually slightly stronger, but they'll also drop the next tier of equipment that you need, and so will the rock deposits and the branches and the things of that nature. So for instance, if you've been upgrading your Castaway Village, you've been upgrading your barricade, upgrading the traps, the gongs, the catapults, all that kind of awesome stuff, you will probably have had the resources that you needed from the previous dungeon that we were in. The echelon of wood, the echelon of items, all those components were from that area that we just conquered. But then you'll have hit a wall where you needed a group of items you've never even seen before. Chances are those items you haven't seen are going to be dropped in this area and in this coming dungeon, because the game meters its progression out that way, and it's both good and bad. On the one hand, you know that you can't do any more than you've already done to get strong, so you don't have to sweat it. But on the other flip side of that, if you're like me and you love the idea of being able to get really strong immediately if you're smart enough and you have enough game knowledge, you can't really do that in this game outside of exploiting an infinite jump. And in my opinion, if you have to glitch a game, then it doesn't really count. Like, if you're a speedrunner, that's just goes hand in hand, doesn't it? But when it comes to getting strong, I'm not the biggest fan of having to exploit a bunch of things and use a very particular trick to get somewhere. The only times where I even think that that's remotely close to acceptable would be, for example, in Bloodborne. In vanilla Bloodborne, at the very beginning of Yharnam, you could jump off a coffin and it would bounce you up onto a fence, and if you knew what you were doing, you could get to the back of Yosefka's clinic and skip the first few bosses to get to the Forbidden Woods. And in Bloodborne, the tiers of equipment, the third tier of upgrade resource wasn't really available to you until you got to certain areas, and by doing that, you could immediately go to the area where you could get it. And that, to me, because all you're doing is doing a tricky jump, is kind of cool. Whereas the infinite jumping is something that's... I just don't see it as being the same tier of glitch, in my opinion. And I know that's probably hypocritical, and you might disagree with me, and that's fine. But, like, I like to be able to use something skillful to get an advantage that's usually given to me by just understanding how the game works. And if I'm just exploiting systems, it always feels like it cheapens it, which is probably just my own personal neuroses. But did you see just then? See them Beyblading? They're so dangerous, guys, and I would recommend doing a lot of safety saves on this mountain. This is the Mount Gendarme, the mountain. Is there a word for anthropomorphize, but instead of humanizing something, it mountainifies something? Because I don't even think mountainify is a word either. Anyhow, this is the mountain equivalent of a French police officer, and it has all of these weird ambient falling rocks. This entire area is an absolute nightmare. It's one of the most tedious parts of the game when it comes to... There's a lot of climbing, there's a lot of getting knocked off that can happen, there are enemies that can do incredible cheap shots, there are ambient hazards that can really hurt you, and you have to... Not only do you have to do this twice, but both times you're going to be navigating similar hazards, so it just... Not my favourite dungeon in the game, it must be said. But at the moment, I'm not killing anything, so it makes it go really quickly, as we pick up a blood formula, which is going to enable you to create something with the doctor to stop bleeding. But in all honesty, guys, I've only ever had the bleeding status on me once, and it's garbage. You don't want it. I should really talk about these fellas. So the Scorpions are a newly introduced enemy at this point. They're very, very durable, they've got a ton of HP, but they're the easiest fight on the planet. They have two really baitable moves. At distance, they fire poison at you that you can get a flash guard on and then go and wail on them. And up close, they telegraph a really slow attack and then claw you with both their arms. And they'll keep doing it, so they just keep doing it and you can keep flash guarding it. The only problem is, you have to hit them like 200 times to kill them, so it's a really boring fight. But I recommend that you do it, because the sooner you get, I think it's 3 of them, you'll be able to get the bracelet that blinds you, that gives you 75 strength. And 75 strength is an incredible boost this early on. When you bear in mind our strength is probably maybe 150 right now, maybe a little bit more. So we'll always almost be doubling our strength, which is really, really cool. But just then, when we were inside the house, you have to examine a bunch of things, and instead of editing it out, I kept it in there to make it a little bit more cohesive so you have an idea where we are in the grand scheme of the mountain. But as you push through, we're going to be going up the next sequence until we get to a boss fight, and the enemies are going to stay the same. You have these rolling tumbleweed pink dudes, and then you have the crazy snake guys that have the thrust, and then that's a floor that breaks away, so be careful there. If you're interested in doing the infinite jump, you can do it across that, because you can infinitely jump horizontally by attacking 3 times in the air and switching on the 3rd attack at the same time as you attack. Because the 3rd attack gives you extra air, you can then chain this with good timing to just repeatedly stay at the same height. There is a much easier trick with Ricotta once we get her, where if you do her aerial attack, she spins and then she comes down, but if you cancel it with an aerial dodge before she comes down, you can kind of keep the same amount of distance while just losing a little bit of height and cover vast, vast canyons worth of space. So I feel like that one is a little bit better because it doesn't feel like you're exploiting the game, it feels like you're using character knowledge to get somewhere. But crystals always symbolise boss fights, guys, so make sure that you eat an appropriate meal to give you an advantage, put the character on that you want, equip him with the tools that will give you the best advantage, and then get ready for a fight that we've done a million times. But right now, you get to see my stats. So my stats are 307 strength with Sahad, and I think I was 197 strength with my main character. So 75 strength is a ton at this point if I can get it, but I haven't got it just yet. But this boss attacks the same way he has in all the other fights. It's just now I think he has access to a couple new moves, and you're probably not going to see them because I'm going to kill him so fast. The claw drag that he did just then has a massive AoE on it, so it will enable you to both flash move and flash guard it if you want to. Because I was out of position, I rolled away because it's just kind of safer. This is a new move as well. Instead of doing the triple burst of fire that he usually does in the second phase, he now does a sequence of tracking fireballs that are pretty simple to guard. And there's the claw drag, there's the proper dodge for the claw drag with the AoE. Look at the damage you can do to him. Absolutely incredible. Then he walks away, starts getting goofy. There's the bullshit scream that I hate. It must be said though, folks, there are dinosaurs who can completely paralyze you when they do that, and there are other dinosaurs that can immobilize you on the ground where you cannot get up, it's an untechable state. This guy doesn't do it, so as much as it's annoying to get pushed away, he doesn't hurt you with it, he doesn't paralyze you, and he doesn't bullshit you by freezing you on the ground. So in the grand scheme of things, I think this guy's completely fair, as much as I'm not a fan of getting screamed at and knocked away. But there you go, guys. Took him out really quickly, deceptively fast. Be aggressive, understand his moves, exploit them, stack those flashes, kill that boss. Thank you for watching, you take care now.